welcome to another episode of the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. Happy New Year. Can't believe it's 2025. I hope you all had a great holiday season. Today, calling in from the beautiful town of Renton, Washington, here in near Seattle, lining up for a program that's coming up next week. So, speaking of programs coming up next week, this gentleman and I had one of the greatest karaoke adventures of all time. And so we'll get a chance now to meet the man behind the karaoke. Right? This gentleman's a trained engineer. He's a former healthcare executive, startup investor, co-founder of a company called BetterCulture, a prominent leadership development and consulting firm with clients spanning from entrepreneurial startups to Fortune 500s. He's an international speaker, and he's one of the 400, just like me, certified speaking professionals. And he focuses on providing practical and actionable advice on leadership. He lives in Omaha, and he has an amazing wife and three delightfully spunky children. Please, let's welcome Brett Hoogeveen. How's
Awesome.
that?
Thanks, John. That was fun. Nice job. Love it.
Oh my gosh, Brett, good morning. How are you doing this beautiful morning?
I am doing wonderful here in Omaha. Thanks.
Now, wait a second. I missed one other fact, right? You're purported to be one of the top 10 Airzooka Marksmen in the world.
Yes, indeed. Self-purported to be. Have you ever heard of an Airzooka?
Is that the big one that shoots a ball of air?
It is. Yes. You're
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
one of the 5% of the people that have ever heard of this thing. So
I mean, a fellow engineer, right? Fellow engineer.
exactly. Yeah. Way back in college, I found this thing called an Airzooka, or it was probably on some infomercial or something, and I ordered one, and I've been toying around with it for the 20 some years since. So I'm pretty deadly from, I don't know, even 50, 60, 70 feet away. I can hit a target. So I've never seen anybody better. So I like to say I'm one of the top 10.
So an Airzooka uses, I forgot what the name is, like something like Vornado or something. Basically, if you take a circle or a funnel and you put out the back on of it and then you let it go, it'll push the air into a ball and then be able to like knock things over or.
It's the coolest thing ever. I had a physics professor that said, "Oh, a portable vortex generator." And I was like, I don't know, I call it an Airzooka. So
Oh my gosh. Fantastic. Well, with three kids, that's a high skill to have. My three kids, luckily, they're all graduated, and the oldest just had a kid. The kid now is 8 months old. Man, that time goes fast. So,
wow.
well, so Brett and I went on this karaoke adventure with a good friend, Kevin Snyder, and it was really funny because it was like, Brett, this is the greatest story of disaster to success. And so Brett was all in. I got to say, Brett was all in, and I got to thank you for that, right? You're committed to the adventure, and you even had a car because you live about an hour from Minnesota where we were at. And then Kevin pulled the integrity card. I love you pulled the integrity card saying, I said I was going to go. Oh, and here's the setup. Why it was so tough. It was like, it was -8 degrees.
Mhm.
And everybody, it was like at the end of dinner, it was late at night, and everybody basically who said they were going to go bail. Everyone
Exactly.
bailed, but not Brett and not Kevin, and I will be forever indebted because
I,
we walked in and I thought it was going to be like one of those worst night evers. And Brett actually is the one. Brett is the one who like turned this into like the greatest party of all time. Brett, do you want to describe how it happened? I'd
I
love
will
to hear
just
your point
say,
of view.
if you're ever in a situation where a friend of yours has rented a private karaoke room and you show up with just three people, you know, look for the other people in the bar wearing Santa and Christmas costumes, and invite them to come join you, right? That was my role in the evening, and we ended up having a really great time.
It was truly like all of a sudden it went from three to a full-blown 15 people, never stopped singing till the place closed down. Everyone had a blast. But my favorite part about it, Brett, was that you found a group that was turned down for a karaoke room because they said there was a 2 hour wait.
I don't know how that's possible, but yes, I said, "Do you guys by any chance like karaoke?" And they said, "We just, what do you mean? We just left a place for karaoke that we couldn't do because of the wait." Like it was amazing. It was so funny.
So Brett, it just gets me to that, right? Speakers are different people. Like they have the ability to literally change the room, right? Brett, we changed that room. That room was ready and full blown primed to be a disaster. And the combination of three speakers like just like turned this place up.
It
So
did. It did. I will remember that for a long time, John. So thanks for organizing.
Well, speaking of which, Brett, why don't you do us a favor for my friends who don't know you yet? Why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself and what you do at Better Culture?
Sure. Yeah. I'm the co-founder of BetterCulture, and BetterCulture is an organization that's focused on helping organizations become more successful by upskilling leaders and investing in company culture. So we help organizations build stronger leaders and better workplace cultures, and we do that from the top down by doing executive retreats, by doing leadership development work, by measuring the health of cultures, and we also do it via a really innovative project from the bottom up by a new technology that we've built called the 20 Tenets of Culture. That's, dare I say, a little bit like a modern day Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, that helps employees be more successful while also strengthening teams across an entire organization.
Oh, so you're part inventor too, sort of, kind of?
Try to be, yes.
There's no try, right? This is like Yoda Star Wars season. Brett's doing it. And so, well, I'm really interested, Brett, is how did you get into this? Like, were you doing something before, or did you progress into this? How did you get into Better Culture?
I fell into it. By happy circumstance, my father built a company in Omaha that year after year after year ended up being named the #1 best place to work in the city.
Wow.
And while I was struggling to figure out if I wanted to be a civil engineer or an investment advisor or a couple other careers that I was testing out with and not really enjoying, I figured out the reason I didn't love it is because I didn't love the company I worked for. I didn't love the people I was working with. And ever since then, that's been my #1 priority for myself and for all of our clients is to figure out, if you can help an organization have the type of culture that will help them attract and build and motivate and keep people, that's a huge business advantage, not just for the business, but for the people too. And so ever since I went to work for that company, that was the best place to work, and I just loved it. And ever since I've been trying to help other organizations figure out how to do the same thing.
Okay, Brett, for those who are like new to culture or just trying to distill your experience, what do you think are some of the top things a culture has to have if it really wants to be on one of these, top 5%? You're like people who know what Airzooka is.
So I can give you a simple answer, and then if you tell me if you want a more complicated answer. All right, here's the
Okay,
simple
okay.
answer. You've got to be, you got to care about culture, people and culture, and you have to have a plan for continuous improvement. Okay.
Mhm.
So it starts with caring,
Right.
and then uh, you've got to think about the organization in a few different areas, the executive team, leaders, a little bit HR processes, but also at the local level, at the team level. What can you actually do on a regular basis to make sure that all those areas are getting better and stronger? And it's
Yeah.
definitely a tortoise versus the hare thing. The organizations that try to do a 1 quarter fix on their culture usually don't make any progress, but the organizations that make continuous little consistent investments over time make a ton of progress. And that's how every best place to work got to be a great place to work. It didn't
Mm.
happen overnight. It happened over 10, 15 years of investment.
Well, good. Well, we get to dive a little deeper because, okay, so one of my specialties is team building. And in team building, there's a great piece of research that is actually not very well known, but my mentor, Dr. Simon Priest, worked on it. And he said that in team building, there's a team development culture index that you can have. So you can kind of get a number that says how well the group or the company or whatever division is working as a team. And like if you do a training, you get a bump, right? And then if you do nothing afterwards, yes, you go back to zero. So culture is like authenticity, is like, your health. You got to keep working on it. It doesn't matter. You can't do it once, right? You always have to do it if you want to continue doing it. But the second part is if you did follow up, right? So you did a team building training and then did some follow up, you'd retain like 80% of the gains. But the secret sauce that I've been trying to tell people for years, and the funny part is people really don't want to do anything about it, Brett, is that if you teach self-facilitation or basically a group how to determine how to make themselves better after they do anything, even if it's a small thing, that group is actually able to keep its gains from a team building event and actually end even higher than that they ended at a professional team building event. My other very, very good friend who was Pete Weinmiller, who was one of the top NBA customer service people for the Seattle Sonics and then the Thunder, he did it too. He just said one thing, like do 1% better every game. and he became one of the top NBA service organizations, regardless if the team won or lost, because he's not in control of that. And
Yeah.
so that's great that you picked on to this one piece. I'm just curious, like, how do you get a group committed to that, or what have you seen as, like, I don't know, you share some of the success stories, I guess, with people that you've seen, Brett.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting on a big part of our business model over the last year or two is to try to help organizations do exactly that, but to make it easy for them, right?
Yeah,
Because there's no shortage of good content out there that could help leaders be more effective, that could help teams be more effective, that could help. And there's also relatively not a big shortage of outside consultants or trainers or coaches or facilitators you could bring in, depending on your approach, that might run a great team building or might do something to invest in a culture. Where the biggest challenge that we see organizations run into is sustaining it, right? Is saying, okay, how do we double down on this? And so with this innovative technology that we've built called our 20 Tenets platform, that's the whole thing is a cadence of resources that we give to organizations that we make it really easy for them to keep making progress and sustaining. And so the reason for the first time we ever built software was to try to do that for organizations so it doesn't become just a human capital issue of like, okay, now the training team or the manager has to do all this stuff to keep it going. We've tried to automate that, and that's that I guess I kind of got excited by what you shared there, because I completely agree based on what we see with organizations is it's not really an issue of initiating something, it's an issue of sustaining it.
and this gets me to the part too, and at least in my theories around team building is that uh, team performance is like software. Like, you got to continually upgrade it. And so this is the part, is like, I feel like you're installing kind of a version of a culture operating system for a company, especially if they don't have one. Like, there are a few companies where they like basically invented their own culture and they found a way to keep it going on with the people, but that's kind of rare. Like, to be able to buy something and have it do it for you, then it actually ideally should make that. Is that the kind of the challenge that you saw, is that most companies on their own were not able to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. And what the trick that we found is we sometimes we sell this as a culture platform.
Yeah.
Other times we really sell it as an investment in your people, right? Because the same content that is in our platform, when we explain it to employees, when it gets rolled out, we let employees know all the stuff we teach in here. If you do it, this is good for you. It'll make you more successful and happy. Now, there's a positive benefit that it'll make healthier teams and healthier cultures. But the unique sort of opportunity that we stumbled into with this approach is it's a win-win for both the people and the organizations. And so the way we try to help drive that sustainability is by convincing employees that they should lean into this, right? And so that lightens the load on management or training or whoever that might be that's also helping.
Well, Brett, so you probably have some data on retention, because culture is one of the, like, people don't leave jobs, right? They leave managers, and managers is often the purveyor of culture. And so I actually did, I don't know if you knew this, I actually did 18 months of work while at Microsoft on retention. I had a program called Why Do You Want to Stay Today? And I think my unique viewpoint on retention is that it's not a war, or it's not a matter of satisfaction. It's actually a matter of dissatisfaction. Like, when people get dissatisfied to a certain level, they're out. And the other key part is that they're ticking time bombs. They're actually all over your company right now, because most people I interviewed were thinking about leaving anywhere from 2 weeks to like 3 years before they actually leave. And so they're already checked out, but they're still taking your payroll, they're still taking space and so many other things. I'm curious that you have any insights on retention regarding culture.
Yeah, anecdotally, my perspective is, so I'm not going to cite a source on this, although, obviously big companies like Gallup have lots of data and we have some data in our own surveys, but I'll boil that down anecdotally. My experience is maybe 5 to 10% of employees have worked somewhere that was so darn good that they wouldn't work anywhere that didn't have a great culture, right?
Right.
I'm in that bucket, right? Like, I would not go take an okay job really.
Yeah.
or a job where I had to put up with a bunch of stuff I didn't enjoy, because I've worked at several amazing places. That's top of my list if I go take a job now. And I'd take a 10 or 20% pay cut to work at a great place. So that's how valuable it is to me.
Yes.
But there's probably 30, 40, 50% of employees who have had those really terrible experiences, the dissatisfying experiences. And so I do think turnover is, I think you're right, is more responsible to really bad outcomes and bad experiences than it is to a lack of a great one.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the goal is to get to the 50th percentile. The goal is like keep pressing, because you want to become one of those organizations that people would say, "Oh, I'm never leaving." Like, I appreciate how great it is here. I love the
Yep.
boss that I work for. I love the company that I work for, because that adds a lot of enterprise, a lot of value to an organization.
Yeah, I give a shout out to my friend Ryo. I don't know if you know Ryo. He is the chief culture officer at Zappos, and I actually got to take the Zappos tour and really get a chance to meet him. And he travels around to other companies, studying their culture, deciding what to bring back to Zappos. That's an investment in culture, and that's why, Zappos is one of those names.
Right. And isn't that cool, right? That one of those organizations globally that has one of the best reputations, their chief culture officer is learning and trying to get better, right?
Every
And
day.
and
Yeah.
and, and versus sitting in an ivory tower saying, "Aren't we great? Look, this is how we do things," right? And
Yeah. And it's over.
yeah, right. Like, here, yep, we've solved it. Just do what we do. That's so amazing, and it's right in track with what we see. The best organizations, like, they when they just won best place to work in their community, and they're like, "Well, what are you talking to us for?" And they say, "Well, we want to get better," and
We want to win it again. Yeah. We
right.
want to be at top
And
of the list,
it's
whatever.
funny because the organizations that are just horrible places to work are the ones that usually don't want to talk to us. Like, they don't value it, right? They are not really interested in making improvement. So
It's the good friend, the river denial. They're on it. They're like, we're fine. We don't need you, Brett. Right?
that's right.
It is frustrating because from the outside, it's like therapy with your friends or something. You're like, that person needs help, but they're like, but if you're not ready for it, and if you're not open to it, you probably weren't going to succeed anyways if you did it.
Yeah,
All
just
right.
keep turning through employees and just keep, I mean,
Yeah,
it
grind.
can work, right? Successful businesses do run that way. I just wouldn't want to work there.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of challenges, let's go back to March of 2020. And so, Brett, how long have you been in Better Culture, like as in the company? You were there before 2020, I'm assuming.
Yeah, yes, I was. Probably 12 years or so we've been running this
Okay.
business or a very similar business.
So I'm just curious, in March of 2020, what happened to Brett? Like, how did Brett deal with, right, a worldwide shutdown, especially in hindsight now? Gosh, we're almost 5 years past this event. And one part is like we'd like to forget about it ever happened, right? It's kind of like that thing you don't want to remember. But at the same time, I think it's one of the world's greatest learning lessons. So I'm kind of curious what Brett, initially felt, and how did you deal with March of 2020?
Well, I'll only speak from a business perspective, and I'll forget about, the social and worldwide stuff that was happening. But from a business perspective for us, it was a great learning opportunity. We were not a virtual business prior to that,
Mhm.
and we were fortunate to have some deep engagements with some of our clients, the consulting engagements, um, uh, products that we were incorporating. So unlike some other people that do speaking, my whole business didn't fall off. However, we had a lot of programs underway, initiatives underway with organizations that we didn't have a plan for how we were going to support those initiatives virtually until it was upon us. And so we had to scramble and learn quickly on what the things we were doing, what they could look like virtually, and we got to a level of competence where we figured out pretty quickly that our clients were appreciating that we were there for them and that we had adapted and that we were able to provide the services that we could provide virtually. And I hope I got to you know 50, 60th percentile, 70th percentile of making those engaging, right? And making those terrific. But I know I still have a lot to learn about exactly how to keep leveling up the bar on making those virtual interactions as effective and engaging as possible.
Well, I'd love your view on this, Brett, which is that I told people in virtual, right? You are creating a culture whether you know it or not in a virtual meeting.
Hmm.
whatever that is, right? So like, here's an easy one. Cameras on, cameras off, right?
Yeah.
There are companies that turned into cameras off culture.
I
Like
know.
one of them was a company and they like in April of 2020 read the research and said that Zoom fatigue came from video on. So everybody turned their camera off and then they left it off for like 2 years. And the
Crazy.
challenge is that you have all this technology and you miss all the other benefits like this, right? We're speakers. We know we're using emphatics, we're using body language. You can tell, a lot from seeing somebody than rather than if you didn't see anything, right? Then it's like hardcore, poker. And so I think that um, virtual meeting culture is either what allowed people to either thrive or not thrive. I don't know what you saw during that time.
So I'm gonna get nerdy just for a second.
Yeah.
And, I run a company called BetterCulture. So let me give you our definition for culture, and then I'm
Okay.
going to apply it to your scenario.
Okay.
The way we talk about culture is it's the attitudes and the behaviors that a group of people comes to expect from one another, right?
Mhm.
So cameras on or cameras off is a behavior, right? And intentionally or unintentionally, that absolutely does create the culture, right? And behavior often will then lead to attitudes. And what I've seen in organizations where you said, yeah, it's cameras off culture,
Yeah.
is people disconnect from the organization. People disconnect from the people. People, hey, my job is to kind of do the minimum I need to do to do my job. And honestly, I'm going to prioritize my laundry or whatever the heck else I got going on. And, eh, you know, that is not good for really anybody, especially or individuals who want to learn and grow and really create something great in their business.
Yeah.
You have to be engaged with the organization. And I have a strong opinion about this, because I do virtual meetings. I can't stand it talking to a room of people with cameras off. So
Right.
I set those
Good.
expectations when I run a program, say, no, like I need you to be present, right? Otherwise it's less effective.
And one of the other give backs for it, Brett, is that I'll tell you, why I'll request, I usually give a choice, but I do make a request of saying, hey, if you can turn on your camera, please turn on your camera. And I'll tell them the reason why is because I said I have a setup where I can see all of you. So, right. So Brett's shaking his head right now. Susie's got a blue shirt on. Whatever it is that I'll go back and prove to them that I'm paying attention, that their camera is not on for no reason,
Yeah.
right? That there's actually some value inside of it. And a lot of times, Brett, I think this is one of the astounding things I've seen is that I have a program now, and it's called turn on the damn camera. And the funniest part, Brett, is that that's actually the worst way to get people to turn on the cameras, to go yell at them, right? Oh, come on, turn on your camera, right? Which is like, it's the worst thing to do. But the goal of the program is that I have been able to get everybody in a meeting to turn on the camera without asking them.
Yeah.
And I think to me that like that's the culture. The culture they discover that I'm running the meeting in such a way that they themselves decide that they will get more value if they turn the camera on than if they don't.
Yep.
And I think that's really, really one of the keys. I mean, the other part here too, and I love to hear your view on this, Brad. All right, I think you probably have a lot of data on this. May have read Google's Aristotle's research. Have you read that or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So they look for all these things that are like, what are the top factors for teams? And is it the money we pay them, the office, the equipment we give them? It's none of those things, right? There's 5 things. So read the report. But the number one is psychological safety. And I'm curious, Brett, what in a company can they do to help create more psychological safety? Again, this was the number one thing that helped teams be higher performing teams.
Yeah. I mean, psychological safety. We have a funny story about this. We have a training concept that we have been sharing with organizations for 12 to 15 years that we call the comfort zone. And we say, if you want to have a great team, everyone should be in the comfort zone with one another. And we define being in the comfort zone as essentially being willing to ask for help when you need it,
Yes.
admit a mistake when you screwed up, and challenge people, including your boss, when you think they're making a mistake, when you think there's something they could do differently. And when you look at Amy Edmondson's research and the work under Project Aristotle about psychological safety, they define it very similarly. on what it takes to be psychologically safe. So I don't know how Harvard and Google figured out what we were teaching before that Project Aristotle thing came out. But I agree entirely. Any team that wants to be effective, you've got to have people in the comfort zone. They have to feel psychologically safe. And there's a lot that goes into that. But having trust and personal relationships and knowing one another a bit individually all contributes, in addition to a whole bunch of other things, to what that looks like. And I'm a big believer in relationships in the workplace. Like people should feel like they have relationships with people. And if you don't have that, you're going to have a real hard time creating a psychologically safe team or workplace. And I don't care what level you're at, executive team, mid-level management or frontline individuals. If you're not building relationships in some way, you're not going to have people admit when they made a mistake, ask for help, or challenge one another openly.
Well, there's another book that had that research, and it says you're 7 times more likely to stay at a company if you have a best friend at work. That relationship piece, right? And so it's kind of weird and interesting that a company which should encourage that, but there is a financial reason to do so. Brett, I have to give this to you as a gift because unless I'm sure you may already have it, but I just thought like when you talk about attitude and behaviors, and we're a bunch of geeks and we're a bunch of engineers, that it sounds like an equation, right? It's like A plus B equals C, right? Attitude plus behaviors equals cultures. That's something like I think would be really memorable. That's a gift for you unless you already have it somewhere in your
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the branding advice. I love it. Thank you, John.
Sorry. So speaking of branding advice, what do you think is the future of virtual and hybrid? I would actually really love to hear from you too about what are you seeing for companies that are hybrid and what the hell are they doing for the culture? Because a lot of people are confused.
It's hard. I want to start there.
Thank
For
you.
most of the organizations that I work with that are not digital first companies, it's hard. And I want to applaud a lot of organizations that are making investments and that are doing good work to shift their culture, shift the attitudes and the behaviors that people show up with on a regular basis to make hybrid work situations work effectively. And for some organizations, it was easy because they were already, a virtual first company. But for a lot of other organizations, it's taken a lot of hard work and slow progress to get there. So first off, I just want to, I think, congratulate those organizations that have moved in that direction and continue just to make little bits of progress. What I find is virtual, remote, and hybrid teams, I place a higher value on the type of things that you do, John, intentionally doing things that create relationships and create engagement is more important on teams like that. And it doesn't have to take a lot of time, but it has to happen with consistency. And so if managers aren't comfortable eliciting personal interactions, stories, engagement, doing things to get, cameras on isn't all there is to it, clearly. It's a good first step, but getting people to self-disclose, getting people to contribute, getting people to chime in, getting people to be their authentic selves, getting people to get to know one another, that just has to be handled more intentionally when you're dealing with a virtual group or a hybrid group.
One of the easiest things that I've seen, is like the proliferation of a form of chat. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't care what it is, right? It could be text, it could be Slack, it could be,
Teams,
WhatsApp.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, but the whole key here is to have at least a channel open where you can communicate with a collection of people. So here, I'll give you my example. I'm currently president for NSA Northwest, and we have a 10-person board. And I actually created for our board retreat a 10-person WhatsApp group. And actually, the beginning of it was just for the logistics, like we actually had our retreat on a boat. It was really cool. We had a board member who gave up a boat. And so, everyone was lost when they getting there, like, oh, you got to park here and you got to, and so we started with that. But the cool part is that this group is still going, Brett. that people are still actually, they were all wishing each other happy New Year's. They were oh, actually one of our board members is a very prolific ink writer, you know, the magazine
Yeah.
Ink.
Yeah.
And she writes every year, she writes this one article about why to theme your year with one word. And it kind, you know, kind of catches fire that a lot of people are actually doing this exercise. And so she's able to put it in the WhatsApp group. Anyways, these are all things that have allowed this board to grow closer together than it was, I think, in maybe some of the previous years, just because we're still communicating with each other all the time. So we're keeping up with each other. And all those things are like the digital parts of building relationship until whatever, you know, opportunity we have to be, you know, in person and have an all, you know, experience all together. So,
Yeah. It's awesome. And the word that comes to mind is community,
yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
Are you creating a community, right? Do people feel like they belong? Do they feel like they know other
Yeah.
people, right? And this is not a digital concept. It's just a human concept, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the people in life, you know, if you look at older age individuals, people who have retired, people, you know, if you ask people what was most important or meaningful to them in life, it's people and relationships, it's community, right? It's you know, the loneliness epidemic in the United States, et cetera. It's not because we don't have ways to communicate. It's not because we don't have technology. It's because we don't feel like we have community, right? And it's very similar to how an employee will feel that's on your team that works remote or in person. If they don't feel like they're at part of a community that values them and that knows them, they're going to be disconnected, disengaged, and at least open to looking for a new job, if not actively looking for a new job. And so, doing things like a chat group, like a Slack or Teams or whatever, to just generate that base of community, asynchronous communication is awesome.
You know what, how amazing it would be to have a company whose biggest mission in life is to solve the loneliness epidemic, at least within their company, right, Brett? I don't, just curious, you have like, what's the best example of community? You don't have to mention company names, but I'm just curious, what's the best example of community that you think you can share from your experiences? Take your
I'm
time.
gonna Best example is hard for me to come up with immediately. I have some that come up in person, like a few of our clients that they're healthcare, right? They're all in person,
Yeah.
but they do an exceptional amount of work to make people feel welcome, to make people be connected. You know, communication, celebration, just an unbelievable amount of encouragement and positivity to help boost people and lift people up. I know that's not a very specific example, but one of our best clients ever. I mean, the amount of stuff that everybody in the organization thinks about actively doing to make it upbeat and positive and to celebrate people and to lift people up and to recognize people and to do cross team recognition. You know, one of the best clients I've ever worked with, they have departments that just spontaneously created their own recognition awards that they give to other people across the organization, right? So they
Oh,
said,
that's cool.
let's go beyond a centralized recognition. Like, who says, you know, HR has to decide who gets recognized or appreciated? Like, we're just going to create our own awards and we're going to give them out on our own schedule. And we're going to, you know, we're going to bust into people's meetings and flap our arms around and give them an Owly award, which means, oh, we love you. And like, it comes with a pin in it. And like,
Oh,
this type of stuff just,
good.
um, proliferated across this organization. And guess what? People feel recognized and
Yes.
seen and
Yes.
appreciated, and they
Yeah.
smile and they
Yeah.
know one another and they know people in other departments and they know that their efforts are appreciated on that team. And it builds community, right? And so simple examples, and those aren't simple, I shouldn't say simple, but examples like that
Yeah.
come to mind very much so. And then I've got other organizations where like people would never want to do that, but like they have a super active Slack channel and you know, an engineering, you know, software engineering company, and like
Right.
they have a great culture, and it's digital. It's a lot digital, but it's still great. But I don't know. Those are the examples that come up.
Well, here, I'll give you one that I got a chance to do. I actually got to chance to MC the Georgia Healthcare Association Awards show. And it was like 2022. It was like one of the first in-person things that I did. And it was really emotional because healthcare went through like the roughest 2 years it could have ever gone through. And
Yeah.
so they were finally getting a chance to recognize all these people who did extraordinary, literally extraordinary jobs. But here's the cool part of the award, Brad, that I had not seen other organizations do, is that they actually created kind of a beauty pageant for the senior care attendees, citizens that they have. And
Mm.
so one of them actually wins a prize, and they actually then make a dream come true. Like hers was like Atlanta Braves baseball. The Atlanta Braves mascot came out, and she actually won a suite at a game that she could attend with a bunch of her friends, and all of that stuff. It was just like one of the coolest pieces of acknowledgement that they were acknowledging to, of course, the people who are all paying them. It's something that they've had for tradition for over 40 years, and it's really something that warms everybody's heart. It reminds them why they do the work they do. It's not about them. It's about, all the senior care people that they take care of. All right. Well, speaking of that, then what do you think? What do you think is the future of virtual or hybrid going forward? And what's the future of culture maybe going forward in the next 5 or 10 years?
I I don't know if this is a answer you're gonna love, John, but like I don't think it's gonna change that much. I think the technology will keep evolving a little bit, I suppose, but humans are humans and people are people, and there are certain things that if you can do them, you'll have a great culture. If people are proud of the company that they work for and the people they work with, you'll have a healthy team and culture. If people feel appreciated for the work that they do, you'll have a healthy team and culture. If people feel like they're growing as a result of being a part of this organization, they're personally becoming more successful, happy, developing, then you're going to have an engaged team. If you protect the right of a good team member to work with other good team members, like if you'll deal with people that are tearing down the culture, that's going to matter, right? And so we founded our company on certain leadership principles, some of which I just mentioned a little bit there. And those principles were created over 30 years ago. And when we rebranded into BetterCulture a few years back, we said, do we need to adjust anything post-COVID, hybrid? We talked to all of our clients. We looked at all the research, and we didn't change a word about what we tell leaders matters if you want to build a great culture, because
Yeah,
it's
cool.
really about how people feel.
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed since, for the last several hundred years at least. What can you do to make people feel a certain way? It's the same stuff.
And that may not change, although I think the only thing we got to change is to get better at it, like this 1% better at it. If we could just get the world to be 1% better, this place would be a better place. But I do kind of think like that. That's what I told people on virtual, like everyone said it's so different. And I'm like, it is and it isn't, right? It's just like we're all humans. We're designed to connect.
Mhm.
Right. And if we can't do it in person, we're going to figure out some other way because that's just who we are. That's what we're going to do. And in either you adapt or you don't. Right. And I think that's really kind of the keys. All right. Well, Brett, here's the fun portion. We're going to go into the speed portion of this.
Ooh,
I have
all
no
right.
sound effects today because I'm remote, but I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. You got to try and answer them in as short or as fast as possible. Are you ready, Brett?
I'm ready. I'll give it a shot.
Okay. The best culture practice.
Have clarity of thought on what it means to be a leader in your business.
Ding. Okay. Best thing you love being about a dad.
Oh man. Um, I am an affectionate dad. I love snuggling on the couch with my kiddos.
Aw, dad snuggling. That's cool. Favorite band?
Pass. I'm just not a competent music person.
Famous style of music?
I
No?
I don't do well with favorites. Okay. If you
Okay.
ask me favorite, I'll say, well, I don't know, when. I might change my mind tomorrow. So
Okay.
pass.
Best meal you ate in the last year?
See, this is a favorite question. Best in the last year.
Oh, I didn't use the word
Oh, I have
favorite.
an answer for this one. I have an answer for this one. I was in Buffalo, New York. Um, Interesting, right? And I said to myself, I've got to have the best buffalo wing in Buffalo. I found a fantastic wing, and I was introduced to the beef on weck sandwich. And so the combination of that sandwich with those wings was amazing. Loved it.
Oh, genius. All right. Final question. The culture you respect the most besides your own?
I'm gonna say where this all got started. There's a company in Omaha called QLI, And it was the company that my dad founded many years ago. It's a specialty healthcare company, and they're amazing. It's the best. It's like Disneyland for company culture. I've never experienced a healthier workplace than QLI. So if you're in Omaha, check it out.
Shout out to your dad. Well, all right. Well, thank you again. I put a link to find Brett at betterculture.com, right? I think I got that right.
Yep.
And Brett, I look forward to seeing you. I hope you're coming to either Influence or Thrive or something so that we can karaoke once again and just change the room.
You bet. You're not going to get rid of me, John. We'll keep crossing paths.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brett. All right, we've been talking with Brett Hoogeveen from BetterCulture, and he's just telling you, right, get a better culture. Figure out how to be, one thing better all the time, and you too can have one of the better cultures that you're looking for. I just want to wish you Happy New Year here from Renton, Washington, and I want to say thank you. And by the way, if you want to be like Brett, you can be, all you got to do is go to engagingvirtualmeetings.com/meet and select interview. And you too can be like Brett and be the next guest here on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. We will see you next time.
Don't we start people and keep cool people? Show you got heart.